All right. Thank you. And thank you, Richard, for the reminder. Okay, so coming back to the draft meeting minutes, I hopefully colleagues have a chance to look at it. I am okay to go through the motion of approving both at the same time, or one by one. So I am happy to entertain a suggestion as to do we want to go both together or do we want to go one by one? Any preference? Danielle, you have
I
your
just
hands
wanted
up.
to check because I think on the agenda there was a third one, although it didn't have a link. There was a third
No, there
bullet
wasn't a
point.
link, so that's the reason why
Hmm.
I haven't mentioned it because I was assumed that the meeting minutes hasn't been formalized, so therefore I am not sort of getting it up.
Yeah, I think I have neglected to check those, so I'm not sure unless someone else has cleaned them up. I think they still
I
need work.
I
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to look at it as well, so that's my assumption that the
Okay.
meeting minutes hasn't been reviewed for publication for wider broader member
No.
review.
Yeah.
Richard,
Okay.
you
So
have your hand up.
I think in general we should approve minutes separately because you may get different people who've been at different meetings, and so
Okay.
they'll wind up having to abstain or something when they've attended one and not the other. So I think we should always approve each individual set of minutes separately because they'll have could have different sets of attendees.
Happy to do that. All right. So with that suggestion in mind, let's look at the first set of meeting minutes, which is on March the 26th. So has anyone has any change requests on the meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve these meeting minutes.
I will move to approve. It's Brett
Thank
here.
you, Brett. Brett, I move to have the meeting minutes approved and accepted.
I can second that.
Anyone second that?
That's Dave McKillop.
David, thank you for seconding the motion. All right, anyone anyone who wants to have further discussions about the meeting minutes? All right, hearing none, let's call to the questions. Anyone want to abstain? All right, Christy.
Sorry, I was just going to say I will abstain because I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay, so we have 2 abstention. Anyone want to oppose? All right, hearing none, we have 11 in audience. So 11 minus 3, that means 2 abstain and also 1 chair. So we have 8, 0, 2, or whichever order it is. Just as 8 in support, 0 opposition and 2 abstains. So the motion is carried. So this now becomes a formally approved and accepted meeting minutes. So second set, right, on the meeting on the 4th April the 10th, meeting, and again thank you for whoever took the notes, extensive notes on the meeting minutes. All right, so anyone who want to request a change in any of the contents that has been captured here?
Danielle here. I would like to. Oh, I think this does need to be changed. I'll spend some time on it today. Like
Okay.
it's a transcript essentially in bullet point form, and it doesn't have the things in the right motion with the ticks, and the format isn't our meeting minute format.
All right. Okay. So then we will defer this meeting minutes to the next meeting. So with an action item on Danielle to clean up these meeting minute content and reformatting it to the formal meeting minutes structure. All right, so let's take care of this item. So we'll defer this meeting minutes to the next meeting together with the other one on the the other March face-to-face meeting minutes. All right, second meeting agenda. AU core issues from AU-based issues arising from AU core ballot. There are 6 issues. How would you want to do it, Brett? Do you want to share and walk it through, or do you want me to continue to sharing?
Yeah, I'm happy to take over. Then I can.
Okay, I'll stop
scroll
sharing
around.
and let you take over.
Cool. Let's do that.
The first 2 issues on that set, while they've got my name against them, were in fact raised by Stephen, just to get your heads up, Stephen.
No worries.
All right, let's.
Okay. So is that
Hello.
sharing okay?
Yep.
Cool. Excellent. So we have 6 issues that were forwarded to us through from the AU Core ballot. So they were triaged by the AU Core TDG co-chairs and passed over to the FHIR Work Group co-chairs who have accepted these. So I was hoping to go through and come to some resolution on each of these. So they have been triaged and there's some notes there around them, but we might just get cracking. So the first one, so I'll let people just see the description. So it is allergy intolerance code value set is not suitable. And if you haven't read it, I'll let you read it for a minute.
Yeah, I raised this ticket. I will speak to that. I find the value set itself contains a kind of like mix match or mismatch of almost everything. And even though it is an example binding, it can benefit from a considerable amount of cleaning up. So that's sort of the essence of the issue that I raised.
Yep. So I think we had, as part of the discussion, we had some review by our terminologists. And I think, Michael, you're on the call, aren't you?
I am fishing for my mute button, but I found it.
All right. So can you remember what? Yeah. So this was a request anyway for more information.
I think we decided this was because it was an NCTS description, not based in the actual IG, that it wasn't for this group.
It is.
It is?
Like it's still about it is. It's not out of scope.
Yeah, it affects us.
So the thing you need to comment on whether is the substance of the comment is appropriate, not whether or not it's in scope.
Yeah.
Could you
should we hold that over to a later date? Like, yes, it
Yeah.
is indeed a NCTS value set that was designed for AU base in the first place.
Could you show us the profile and the link to the value set?
Let's just get CI would be the best. So we're talking about allergy intolerance code. indicator of hypersensitivity or intolerance. So we now have.
You just copy that, into the browser.
Yeah,
That'll take you to NCTS.
NCTS.
Is it meant to do that, or is that a temporary aberration?
Depends on who you speak to. We think it shouldn't.
It's
Graham says yes. That this is a change in IG publisher behaviour. I think we're currently arguing that with Graham about it.
Yeah, I think it's just the nature that we actually do resolve those now to a server. So it's just behaving like it's always done when it resolves to a server that hosts it. But yeah, that's not ideal for us because we want to look at the actual canonical URL. Anyway, so
there is a property we can add to all the value sets in NCTS, and I've logged a ticket with them to do that, and that'll fix it.
Ooh,
but it's not done yet.
Okay. All right, cool.
So if you just look at the first few examples, just scroll down one more, you see that you see that there are kind of like say for example, abilify ODT. Hang on, no. Yeah, so it seems to be kind of like a whole set of chemicals, ingredients, etc. And I find it not very useful to have the value set as a um, as a holding pad for everything. So I'm not sure that that actually adds much value to any users.
So that's not the issue you proposed. You didn't propose to change the actual content of the issue, but its name and description.
Hang on. Can we relook at the issue? Yeah, there are two. There are one that I have logged is about the name and the definitions.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the international set you've quoted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so now that I reread what I enter, so I'm kind of finding it a bit confusing to have the definitions that number one depart from the international definitions, and it's not exactly about the indications of hypersensitivity or intolerance to substance. So it's sort of more about the specific substance or product that the allergy or intolerance condition is relevant about.
I've got to admit, I don't quite get it. It seems a bit like just different kind of slightly words there in the definition for both of them. They talk about substances and medications. In the definition of both of them, they talk about findings or negated findings, just slightly different words. So I'm not, I mean, one is using the language proposed by the NCTS terminologist, and the other is the language that's worked through the FHIR standard. But they're saying the same thing to me when I read them.
Well, there are subtle semantic differences between the languages. So I'm not the purpose of the ticket is to improve the meaning and also readability. Happy for the collective group to decide whether a change is warranted.
To me, they read the same.
Yeah, I guess is the intent. Like obviously this is an example set in the FHIR spec.
to me, the FHIR spec description is a lot clearer.
You're talking about the definition on that page. You're saying that's clearer than the one in the NCTS.
Guess what we got? Yeah, I don't know. That's
yeah, as I said, I am okay for the group to vote. Whichever way that the group is happy with. I will stop making a further comment and revert to the chair position. So with the chair hat on, is there a motion on the table as to how to dispose this zero ticket?
Could I just propose, like, I think the outcome would be, if anyone feels compelled to suggest a change, this is content that's managed by NCTS, and whilst we care in terms of the quality, I'm not sure if we're not changing the actual semantics. I think that would be something an individual could take up with NCTS as a.
So from a procedural perspective, I think I'm okay with I think we should sort of put a motion on the table, and then we can discuss and vote on it. Some of the discussion may include your suggestion, Brett.
Cool. And Danielle?
I'd like to rebut some of what you said there, Brett. I know there's a number of value sets that are published, like their source of origin is NCTS. And they include ones that come from the Digital Health Agency. They include those that come from Queensland Health. They include those that come from RCBA. And there are some in there that whose entire purpose is to support a HL7AU spec. Yeah. So I don't actually think it's appropriate for people to be going to NCTS to address those ones that are whose source is to support a HL7AU spec and going outside of the HL7AU process. So I don't think it is. I don't. For some of them, and I think this one was designed to support AU base, and we can get an update again on it. I mean, we've got the original minutes in the HL7 minutes on how this came about and what it does.
Yeah, true, and I in so many ways, like since it is dedicated, that's definitely falls into things we'd like to have some say in terms of how they are.
Richard, you have your hands up.
Yeah, look, to a certain extent, we're arguing about the name of this, and it strikes me that there's a stylistic thing of whether you want to call this an indicator of blah, 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 or whether you want to call this a set of codes. And the rest of it seems to be the syntax that, in terms of the name, the rest of it seems to be the syntax that follows around from that. Is that really a key part of what we're arguing about here, or are we more arguing about the description? Because I think the original issue was about the name rather than the description, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think the original issue is about the name, that the name is not particularly reflective of the description, both from the international perspective and also from the AU definition, and the international description is a lot more semantically clear. So let's sort of come back to this issue, which is about the name of the value set. So I thank you, Richard, for bringing us back to focusing on the issue itself. With all those discussions that have been done. So in the interest of time, I need to time box those discussions. So therefore we can move on as many as possible. I would entertain a motion on table about this JIRA ticket as to how we would want to rule on this one. And then we can open up for further discussion if necessary. Anyone want to make a motion?
I'm still at a loss of where to go from here, so I'm not in a position to put forward a motion.
I'll motion that we
Yep.
don't change the name of the value set. Is that I'll say that the reason I'm motioning that is that I think it's been around for a while and people are used to it. And so unless or until we change the content, which I think we might do at some point, I think we should just keep this name for consistency's sake across previous AU-based versions.
Okay, so Daniel, your motion is find this ticket non-persuasive with the reason that the name has been in use for a long time, and until there is such time there's a compelling reason to change the name will remain as is. Correct?
Yes, that's right. Thank you
Okay.
for rephrasing. That's better.
Right.
I second it.
Yeah.
Michael.
All right.
And I think
Okay.
part of the reason for not changing it is that changing it without changing the content or definition would just be all cost and no gain.
Yep. All right. Happy for the motions on table. All right. So, all right. In that case, then, any further discussions or any questions on the motions? All right. If not, then let's call the questions. Anyone abstain? Anyone? Oh, hang on. One. There's one
Christy,
abstain.
yes.
Christy. Yeah. There's one abstain. Anyone oppose? All right, hearing none, so there will be 901. So motion carried.
Cool.
Next one.
Nice. Okay. Also, I'm just making a note here. I'll show my screen. So I'm just adjusting some of these words too. Just to capture Danielle's thing too. Next one, exposure route. Suggestion needs a new name. So to look at this issue, I think this one.
Yeah, I think the route that is in this value set, so it's about the route of administration. Exposure is not exactly about administering. You can expose without deliberately administering the substance to the person, and hence the name of the value set is misleading in that sense.
Getcha.
So I guess the thing is, if I brush against a bush, that's a route of exposure, but it's not a route of administration, because administration has got the idea of being deliberate.
Cool.
That's right.
Is it just the name, or is there any semantic problem?
Well, the semantic problem would be from how the value set is being described.
Yeah, it does talk about routes by which a medicine may be administered. So
Yeah.
I guess the thing is, brushing against a tree, brushing against the skin is a route by which medication may be administered, but is probably going to be pretty low on the list of routes by which medication is administered. And likewise, injection by insect is going to be a very low use route of administration, but both of them are going to be quite high routes of exposure.
I mean,
quite
yeah,
frequent
I
routes of
mean,
exposure.
bee sting is an example that negate the name of administration. So you can't say that you want the bee to administer the bee venom to you.
Until we bioengineer bees to provide vaccines to people, and we have bee stings as a way of administering vaccines. That's probably not this century.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
yeah, I just had a question from Michael on this. I'm not sure what the ref set definition is for this either. Oh, it is a route of administration reference set.
Maybe we want a route of administration reference set, and this one's a different reference set.
I believe
all we said was that it's narrow. It's a narrower definition. There are other routes whereby you could be exposed, but it's not semantically correct. It's just narrower than required.
So is that right? In the sense, is it too narrow?
Well, both the name and the descriptions are too narrow, in my opinion. So the key reasons that I locked this Jira ticket. So, and again, in the interest of time, I would like to entertain a motion.
I still have a question, because Michael, is it only routes? Is the actual definition of the reference ref set only medicine route of administration?
While you talk, I'm just going to look it up. It's on my doco page.
Thank you, because that to me would be
and also when you look at food allergy, you don't sort of consider that as an administration. You just ingest sort of by way of necessity.
It's, to me, it's looking like the problem's not with the name of the value set. The problem's with the value set chosen, that this is probably a quite useful value set for a different use, and that we actually want a different name, different definition, and different set of values. So we actually want a different value set rather than a renaming of the existing value set.
I think I can't remember whether or not I actually logged another ticket about the content of the value set.
Yeah, I think, like, I'm looking at these example codes, and I think it's not just medicines route. It's general.
Well, so the definition is it's a route of administration value, and it's a qualifier. So SNOMED qualifier.
Yeah. So these are not all medicine routes either.
It looks to me as if some of these routes are going to be, you've got to open somebody up with a knife and cut your way through a few layers before you can administer some of these things this way. And so that they're going to be vanishingly small as routes of allergic reaction.
Yeah, but it's broad.
Well, okay. Well, caveat here. This is a smaller set than what's in the FHIR standard. So so I don't think we want to start arguing that this is too big, or that, again.
Yeah. So let us bring back to the issue raised again. Okay. So that's the semantics and also the name of the value set. So I would like to entertain a motion, given the interest of time, about this ticket that's being raised.
I'm not sure how to phrase this as a motion. My feeling is that this is not, is that as a rename, no, I would disagree. As a find a new value set, I would agree.
But what value set, though? Like there's a FHIR standard one that exists. Is this actually removing the localization from AU base that puts in a preferred narrower reference set from SNOMED CTAU?
Yeah, it is. We'd prefer you to use one of these rather than their wider ones, but we're not requiring you to. It's like.
So, Richard,
I guess I'm thinking this is an improvement, but it's not as much of an improvement as I'd like. So, yeah.
I understand that. So, in that case, would you like to make a motion finding this ticket non-persuasive with a reason that, or non-persuasive with more that with the reason that you find that not just renaming and recreating a definitions is not sufficient, and you want to propose for future consideration a new value set for this one. So that would be non-persuasive with more.
Yeah, I think I'd say it's non-persuasive because, in fact, I like the name exposure route because that's exactly what it is. But the thing is, the content is something. So I'd say non-persuasive with a modification, and the modification is to improve the content of the value set to be more appropriate for this situation.
But the name is about route of administration.
The value set is called exposure. Oh no, the value set is called route of administration.
Yeah.
Okay. It's non-persuasive because the value set does what it says. It's just not a great value set here.
So
essentially the same as international though.
But that doesn't mean that the international one is correct.
That's true. You're right. Yeah. But well, the example international.
Yeah. So
if we come up with a better value set, we may even convince the international to adopt it.
Exactly. So Richard, so what is your motion? Your motion is non-persuasive with mod because renaming is not going to fix the problem. You are proposing a better value set.
Yes, a better value set should be found. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the motion. All right. Anyone want to second that?
So are we going to
So there's a motion. There's a motion on table that this Jira ticket is non-persuasive with mod, non-persuasive for the reason that the just renaming and changing the definitions won't meet the purpose of the value set. We need a better value set for this item. So anyone wants to second that?
I think it fails for lack of a second.
If we don't have a second, this can't move forward.
Someone else want to propose well, I'll withdraw it. Somebody else can propose a different motion.
All right, Richard is happy to withdraw. Anyone want to?
Yeah, I just want to. I want to move to just find it non-persuasive, and then any further action can happen outside.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a new motion on the table, non-persuasive, pending further action.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, Richard second that. So we have a motion on table. We have a second. All right. Any further discussions? All right. Any questions? If not, then let's call to questions. Anyone oppose? Hearing none. Anyone abstain? Angus abstain. So we have one. All right. Then we have 10-0-1.
Nice. Okay.
Thank you. Next one. So I'm mindful about time. So we do need to move. And if we can't resolve all, we might have to come back next time if we want to go to the to the third agenda item.
Yep, cool. So speaking of this one, so this was raised against encounter hospitalization discharge disposition value set. So I'll open a ticket. So basically there's a question as to we are using a value set separation mode, which is an NCTS set and is the extensible binding to the encounter discharge disposition. So looking at that on let me get up. So looking at encounter, we are talking about the binding to the discharge disposition element as separation mode. This, just some commentary on this one. This is the issue itself is this question as to why we aren't using what is an example binding actually from the core spec, rather than the one we've chosen. So
did we need to discuss that in this group again? I mean, I'm happy to. I think lots of people on the line have been party of that discussion and where that is and where it comes from and why.
Yeah, I think I'll just summarize it quickly. Is that the content in the FHIR spec is completely example content and very much inadequate anyway, and is not, is an example binding, just to show the usage. This is a very well established value set that's been included also in My Health Record representations in CDA, so it's well known, and I would say I would like to probably move that we find this non-persuasive.
All right, we have a motion on the table to find this non-persuasive, similar to the first one that we voted on, that this value set has been sort of broadly in use, or has been in use for a while, and this, because it's an example binding value set, there is no compelling reason to change. So does that sum up your motion, Brett?
It does.
Okay. Anyone wants to second that?
I'll second it, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. All right. Any other questions? Any further discussions?
Hang on, there is Heath.
Heath.
Yeah.
All right.
So you're saying that the Australian value set is being used substantially over and above the one that's being used internationally?
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually AHW standard separation. Yeah. It's a value domain on AHW, and it's implemented already in CDA, and many systems have it directly implemented in hospital systems.
When you say CDA, as in what's uploaded to the My Health Record?
Yeah, in discharge summaries. Yeah. So it's actually implemented in. It's actually standard coding for discharges beyond My Health Record 2, I think. So it's a reporting.
But it is Australian only.
Yeah, it is Australian only. The international one is an example set that I believe nobody uses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Richard?
Maybe some of Heath's discomfort with using an Australian value set could be reduced if, as a separate piece of work to identify mappings from the codes in this value set to standard SNOMED codes or something or other like that.
Yeah,
so that would be a separate piece of work to say what other people might call these same concepts.
Yeah, I think it's worth looking at the value set. Just ask this before, but it's the same.
Yeah, I know that I'm a chair. I normally wouldn't interject with sort of my opinion, but I think the AIXW value set has been used for a lot of the statistical purposes in order to compute the statistics of separations from care institutions. So that's one of the reasons why it has been used quite broadly or substantially, in particularly in discharge summaries.
Yeah, I can see good reasons for continuing to use it. I'm just thinking that a separate piece of work that Heath might like to propose is that mappings be developed independently to this issue. And so that's not really part of this issue. It's part of giving Heath a possible way forward.
I think
it's worth. Yeah, I think this is worth. This is not a SNOMED set that's an example binding because of licensing. It's a homegrown FHIR code system that is still bound as example. So to me, it's completely just an example set.
Yeah, I think it has statistical. It has statistical purposes, and I think that's is a point that's worth noting in the disposition.
Yeah, Heath thing mentioned SNOMED as an alternative, and what I was thinking was not so much mapping to this one, but mapping to appropriate SNOMED codes if they exist. There'd be a separate exercise. But I think we should stick with these with the Australian terminology for this element.
Yeah, I would like to move on, progress with this motion, and then if there is a separate motion to move to the mapping, we can deal with that as a separate motion. All right, so we have.
I would like to move. We find it non-persuasive as the current writing is adequate.
So there's motion on the table that this issue is non-persuasive, but because the value set has been quite well established use, especially for statistical purposes. So Richard, are you still okay with the seconding? I remember that
I
you
will
seconded.
second that. Yes, I'll second that.
Yep. All right. So therefore, with the questions and discussion well underway or well gone and done, so I think we can call to the question. Anyone who want to abstain? Christy abstain, Heath abstain. So we have 2 abstains, abstention. Anyone oppose? All right, so we have 14. So therefore, that means we have 1201, 1102.
Cool. Excellent.
All right, next one.
Moving on.
I think Michael has posted a note. Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, okay, so we have, yes, so this is around individual pronouns and the coding thereof. And the issue itself, actually, I'm gonna go back and do this instead. Issue itself is around adding an other code.
Heath, since you're on the line, did you want to talk to that? I had some things that I really wanted to ask about that, but I'd like to hear what you were thinking when you proposed.
Yeah, thank you. I was reading that, and that was the question that I would like to raise as well. Thank you for raising that, Danielle.
So MediRecords is implementing pronouns. They have requirements to, well, they want to be able to support the other pronouns other than the 3 that are defined by the current value set. They did some research around how to dealing with others, and they got a value set of something like 100 other potential pronouns for gender and things like that, if you go out to the web and things like that. But it was just getting too hard to implement. So from what the solution they ended up with was allowing someone to enter in other, and then just capturing it as text. But unfortunately, that text is kind of not in a structured place in the database where they could safely extract that out every time. So it kind of goes in as a note. So it was more of an indicator to say there is some other pronoun that they go by, but without explicitly providing that value. So they can't use an extensible, they can't use text safely. So it would be nice to be able to have the other the code in there to be able to represent that data.
I mean, Stephen will probably say that something very similar to what I would, which is the other code can't be used that way. In terms of like the OTH from the null flavor, which indicates it's not a member of the permitted data values, and with an extensible set will maintain this grows. If you have a different coded one, you can put that at any time and you don't need to put OTH. Other doesn't mean I have something different. Other is very much the kind of a exceptional value field. And I don't think it can be used to safely to satisfy the usage you were describing that MediRecords needs.
I actually think it, like the way you've described that what other is for is exactly what they're using it for.
I don't think it is. They have a known value. It's not one of those
they don't
ones,
have a
don't
known
they?
value.
And in that case,
they're simply recording it as they go by some other pronoun,
which is not what that
and then
code
they
is
have to
for
go
either.
elsewhere in the record to find it.
Yeah, but that's to me just uncoded. So,
yeah.
Yeah. So if they want to put other in the text element, that's fine.
No, they can't put that.
Yeah.
That's
it's
unstructured.
Well, it is unstructured.
Well, it's just
unstructured. That's what you're doing. I mean, other means concept not provided by required
but
code
that's not
system.
the value. Other is not the value as such.
When you use the code,
if you add it to the value set, it is.
It's
semantically problematic as well with like if you do expand, especially with extensible as well, because the meaning will change as you extend.
Yeah. Well, other as a code would perhaps be a mistake, but you could have a code which was neither male nor female, because if there's only 2 codes there, male and female.
This isn't about identity. This is how they go. He or she or they or.
So I would agree that other is actually a code. So if you want to include it in the value set, then that's the end of it, and you can't just say that, look, well, I have this value other, and you have to look somewhere else. I think that's my understanding.
And that's how they want to use it. They just want to simply say it's other.
But if I heard you correctly, you say that, well, there is a text field for you to put in.
No, there isn't. It's in the notes.
Have I got this right? So the system can store, it can store personal pronouns as the masculine ones, or as the feminine ones, or it can say we don't have pronoun information. And then the other information you can have is, we do have pronoun information. It's none of those three, and you'll have to get a human to read it.
Yeah, the problem is that you can't. I don't think you can have an unversioned other concept, because it will change meaning as new codes are added.
So that's why I was thinking that the a code could be a very specific code, which means, you know, it lists out the codes you've currently got, and it says not one of those. And then if somebody adds an extra code in, then they can decide whether they want to use the new code GGG, or whether they want to use
so it would have
a Heath system, which is none of these five.
Yeah, and it would have to change if there's a new code added. It'd be a new code. There'd have to be a new other code that was different.
Only if Heath system didn't support that new code. See, if Heath system did support, but then you'd still have to convert all your historical data. So yeah, yes, you'd now need two others.
Well, the data is still other until it's changed by a user.
Yeah, but the meaning's changed.
See.
Yeah, so you would have the original. You would have the original other code, and then if you start entering new ones with an extra code in the set,
the meaning hasn't changed, because the user still selected other at the time.
Yeah, but the meaning was other than the codes that were listed explicitly.
I think
what we want is
No, I'm not, because the meaning's changed. Because if I get other from the past, it means something different than other from today.
Yeah, sadly, other is a splitting hairs code. It's quite specific edge casey stuff.
So other winds up other, as we put it on forms, is always other in a context. So the form will have your choices are this, this, and this, and then other is something different to this, this, and this. So other is always in a context. And so what this means is, as the context changes, because you add more codes, the meaning of other changes, because it's used in different contexts. And that's why the code other by itself is not informative enough. The other has to carry with it the context in which it was used, which means listing the codes that it means not one of.
The other reason I want to push back on this is that we didn't design this value set to be expansive. Like, it's not all even the pronouns in length. So I think adding other to this particular value set, which isn't like a required binding, implies to people that they should just use other if it's not one of those ones in this value set. And I don't think we intended to encourage that behavior. We wanted people to choose another code if one was available.
Yeah, or start to extend to bring in more information. So yeah.
So whether it is extensible is one question, and also I would agree with what Brett has said earlier, that when you add new codes, and also what Richard said, when you add new codes to the system, the meaning of others change. So that's sort of like something that would cause semantic problems.
But I guess without putting a not one of the other code into the value set, let me think there. So Heath, when your guys are wanting to populate this field, sometimes they'll have a proper value to put into it, and then sometimes they'll know that it's not the first one and it's not the second one, and they'll know there's something else in a text field that they don't have access to, so they can't extract it to fill in the original text field, so they're wondering what on earth they could put in. I guess they could put in a populate with a text field, and the text field could be not reportable, or none of the above, or something or other like that. And so that could be in the text field without it being coded.
I mean, I'd be happy if it said other in the text field, as long as it's not coded.
But I don't feel comfortable that that's processable. Putting that in the text field is not processable, in my opinion.
So are you thinking about how you populate this, or how you make use of this?
I'm worried about when this becomes must support, and I have to provide something because we have the concept, but I don't have a valid value to put in there. So what do I put there?
Well, I mean,
it's
if
not a must, it's not
It's
a missing.
But
It exists. So I need something to put there, and it's not for me putting the term other, whether it's uppercase other or lowercase other or whatever in text, is not computable.
Is it?
but
a,
you don't have a codable concept at that point. You say, I mean, you've got just a text
Well, I'm
description.
trying
That's all
to
you've
get one.
got.
That's what I'm trying to get.
Yeah,
Anyway.
but it's not. It's not. Yeah, I don't think you're unable to code it. I think
So
not
is this data field a coded or codable concept data field?
it's codable concept because it's
Codable concept.
Yeah,
Is it
codable,
if
it's
it's a
codable
codable
concept, and it's not a required binding, I don't think. So what it means is, it seems to me the appropriate thing is, if you want to process it, so if I get this as a receiving system, I say, does it have a code? No, it doesn't have a code. Does it have text?
We do have a code.
What's your code?
We're recording a code of other.
Okay, but the thing is, to populate this, if other's not in the set, then what happens is, the person receiving it says, does it have does it have this set? Does it have this value? No. Does it have that value? No. Does it have any value? No. Okay, so this means that it is not it is not a value in the standard exchange code, even if it has a local code. And because it doesn't have a value in the standard exchange code, I process it as being exactly what you want for other.
All right, Ruben has his hand up.
Yeah, look, I'm not really following why putting uses other pronouns in the text field is problematic here, Heath. Can you explain that?
Because it's free text.
Yeah, and there are going to be lots of cases of free text for anyone for whom those three provided values are not appropriate. And we expect that.
Sorry, I misunderstood your statement. So basically, they're recording that it's not one of these three, it's some other value. And then elsewhere in the clinical notes, they're actually putting, amongst other text, the value of what they actually do go by.
So
we can't safely extract that out of the clinical text to be able to put into the into this field. It's just part of the notes.
Yes, I understand that, but when you come to using AU Core to exchange this information, why is it problematic for them, if they're unable to extract the actual pronouns, to just put use as other pronouns in the text part of the codable concept data type?
Because I've got no round trip. So what if someone screws it up on the way round? So if it's capital O,
we can't design for people screwing things up.
I just don't. If it was a well-defined code, like I'm proposing, then I'm able to actually reproduce the record on when I get that same data back again.
I think the issue is it's not a well-defined code, and because I think what you're trying to do here is say uses other pronouns, and we have the pronoun somewhere else, and by making it this code, we can then know that we can go and find it somewhere else when it comes back.
But if we look at this
value, it goes beyond other. It's simply not shared is probably more accurate then.
We're looking at these value set here. We've got these other absent reasons. We've got asked to decline, asked no, unknown, not asked, all those sorts of things, but I'm not allowed to use other. Because other is actually a member of that absent reason. Why? All I'm asking is to include one other from that same code system.
I think coming back to the point of whether the concept itself or the code itself is well defined. So all the other things that you have mentioned, not asked, not answered, or not provided, they are well defined. I don't think that the concept of other is defined well enough for it to be a code that is meaningful. If you, as Brett said earlier, if you have currently a value set of 200, as you said earlier, that you don't have any code for, and you sort of say other, and then you have the actual value in a text field. And what happens if 50 of them get elevated into the code set, and then the other suddenly change the meaning? So you don't really actually have a way of discerning what actually other mean.
I mean, I
to be honest, it's like
point.
You're asking me to put other in text. I don't see any difference of me putting other in text as other as a code. The change in meaning that you're arguing is exactly the same, whether I put it in as other or not. But either way, I don't want to hold up.
Yeah, because I think there's a difference. There's a difference between other reason for being as absent and other pronoun.
Yep, spot on.
So yeah, so I think what he's saying actually makes sense, because the code is other reason for being absent.
So this is the null flavor other, and the null flavor other means some other.
Yep.
There's a reason for being absent, but it's not one of the coded reasons for absent.
So in the interest of time, Ruben, do you still have something that you want to say? You have your hand up.
Nope, sorry.
And I wanted to bring it back to, we couldn't use unencoded, because that's another null flavor code that might be usable, unencoded.
So I want to bring this issue back to the table. So given we have all those discussions, I don't think that we have arrived at anything specific. So I would like to, and in the interest of time, I would like to entertain a motion to be put on the table on this issue or on this JIRA ticket. Anyone wants to make a motion? All right, if we have no motion on the table, then we can't progress this one. We will have to defer. So Brett, are you?
I think we're going to need to work out how we're going to get to an answer. But
okay, so in that case, then so I am a chair's prerogative. So I ask that this issue be tabled for future discussion. At the meanwhile, I would suggest that the co-chairs, whoever takes on this ticket, work with Heath and others to come up with a disposition to come back to this meeting.
That's a good plan.
All right. Now we are 9-10 minutes after the top of the hour. So how many more do we have? 2 more? Is that right, or 1 more?
Well, 2 more, but we should. They're easy because one of them's retracted.
Okay. In that case, if they are easy one, then let's sort of go for them.
They're both mine, and I can. I retracted one around PBS codes as being part of an ingredient in medication. I kind of think there was a couple of good points raised against it. So
all right. So
I think pretty much I'll retract that one.
All right.
And the last one was also going back to the hospitalization discharge disposition value set. This was beyond just the value set that we're using. There is a new Meteor value set, which value domain, which is an AHW value domain, which is effectively a new version of that value set. So just to look at that, effectively there was some there's a whole new set of AHW codes defined, and there was a change to this is a good example of the change of meaning of other. Originally, Code 9 didn't include residential aged care, usual place of residence, or did rather include discharge to residential aged care, usual place of residence, was part of the other code. And since then, they've brought that out as a separate code, as a specific discharge destination, and the meaning of other changed. And so what they've done is recoded everything with a new coding. So all these codes are now different in here, but effectively the main difference is that there's a new concept introduced, which is this 22, and the meaning of other changed to remove discharge to residential aged care, usual place of residence. So my ticket on that one was we should look at that as something to consider. However, I also think it's something that I would be happy was pushed off into the future. Let's just say that.
So in the vein of the previous discussions about changing the value sets to SNOMED, so this is going to have broader implications to implementation, and are we treating it in a similar way? And moving forward, we can raise the questions with implementers as to whether or not they're ready to move towards this new value set. Is that the kind of gesture that we are considering for this ticket?
I think that would be wise to maybe work out the uptake of this new set, because it is the current standard effective value domain that's defined by health. So so I think we probably need to talk to vendors about how they're approaching this change, or whether it's happening or not, and also their plan for how they would look at that. Obviously, there's a historical record that uses the original value set, and there would be, if there was movement to this, there'd be some questions about how that happened.
Okay, Danielle, you have your hand up.
I do. Agency folks, I know every now and then it comes up that discharge summary might be reworked, and I'm wondering, is that any time on the work plan over the next 3 to 5 years, do you reckon? Which is sort of relevant too, because I assume that doing a defined terminology for separation mode would be in that. So I'm wondering if that's something that might be coming, and therefore we'd want to target this work to be looked at the same time then.
I'm not aware that anything is on the horizon. Richard, do you know?
No, it's one of those things that people wonder about, but haven't heard of any interest in doing anything with it.
Yeah, so that I think that's kind of from my position, really. I'm not sure there's a drive to make this change, but I would actually probably like us to consider how the change might play out. So maybe it's a terminologist question as to how we might, how this might work. Yep.
What is your suggestion for disposition on this one, Brett?
My suggestion is to make this for future consideration, and
and with a survey of the implementers community. Okay, good.
That sounds good. Yep. I will move that.
So the disposition of this one is: do you want to find it non-persuasive with mod, or?
It's future consideration disposition. I think it is, isn't it?
Is it? Yeah, there is. It is. Okay. Let's the disposition decision is for future consideration, and it will be useful to survey the implementer communities as to their future directions on adopting this new value set.
Awesome.
All right, cool. All right, so we have a motion on the table. Anyone who wants to second that?
I'll second it, Michael.
Okay, Michael, thank you. All right, any further questions? Any more discussions? All right, if not, then let's call to the question. All right, anyone oppose? Hearing none, anyone abstain? All right, hearing none, we have 13, one participant has dropped. We now have 13, so therefore we have 12-0-0. So motion carried. All right,
Thank you.
Take care of agenda item number 2, which is the AU-based AU-based issue arising from AU core ballot. So the next item is about IXI validation extension draft. And Brett, this is also your agenda item. Do you want me to display, or do you want to display and drive the discussion at the same time? Hello, Brett. You are talking in mute.
I am. Yep, I can drive and show that because it's really just looking at. Sorry, one sec. I'll just get it up here. Pages. The meeting. Share this one. Right. So basically, this is revisiting, and I think we did quickly review this once already, but I think I would just look to finalize action on this one probably. So this was an extension. So this is an extension on in the context of names. I was trying to go through the minutes to find if we made any other further decisions. So at the moment, this was against patient-related person and person names, and what it was the ability to add a coded so this was a general thing, mainly a context definition which may be coded, and in our case this was to handle the ability to be able to identify where a name is the name to use for IHI validation. So this was from an original issue from AU Core. So I think for the group, I just had a few questions. So first, does that make sense as far as what this is for?
That makes sense to me. I have a question, but that makes sense to me.
Ask a question, Richard.
Why is it better to put it on the element than to put it inside the human name data type?
So to make a name data type. Yeah, that's a good question. So the alternative approach would be to create a.
You could have basically the same extension inside the human name data type. I haven't thought about whether that would be better or worse. would give it only a single location instead of multiple locations, but it's really not obvious whether it's better or worse. It has the downside that maybe people don't expect extensions on data types. But other than that, I'm really not.
It was the original proposal. The original thing that came from AU Core was to add a property to name. And then that got changed through a couple of conversations, whether that was a good idea or not. And I'm not sure I followed why we moved it off the name. Oh, Heath might be able to comment on that. You've popped your hand up.
Yep, Heath, you have your hand up.
I may not be following what the issue is, but on the wire, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, true.
No, different location, different context. And the implication, therefore, on
we were going to
where
reference
and how we do
the
this
original.
across,
yeah.
But on the wire, the extension will be within the name element in both cases. It's just whether we are dealing with it generically, as in wherever the human name type is used versus whether it's only patient.name. That's the distinction, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it would be
what
like
we're arguing. Well, not arguing, but is that what we're discussing?
I think so. It would be if we created a data type profile that included this extension, we could just then say it's appropriate to use this data type profile on AU-based patient name or AU Core.
So is there a use case for us to use this on a practitioner name and an organization name?
Not. Yeah. That was going to be. Nah. Yeah. Well, that was going to be one of my questions. Actually, is do we think it's like we've only talked about RHIs, so really it's only patient and patient related kind of things.
Ruben, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Brett just touched on it. I think this extension is probably appropriate for related person name as well, because we have authorized reps and all that sort of thing.
I think.
What about practitioner, Ruben?
Yeah, I did that. So.
Yeah, look, I can see a use case for that, not least maiden surnames and that sort of thing. So yeah, I'd support practitioner too.
But
why would you need to use it on related person? Ruben, given that you don't need to do HI validation.
I think there's
sometimes you do though.
Context.
Yeah,
I think you do sometimes.
Yeah, you do, because there's potentially on behalf of in my health record.
That field might be able to be used for things more than HI use. If you've got, I think some Aboriginal groups have names that have to be used in certain circumstances and not in other circumstances. So a field like this might allow you to put a gloss on a name to say what other specific contexts it's useful in.
Yeah,
it's being used on a patient.name though. If that's what we're talking about here, whether it's on the type versus on an element, then the Aboriginal name or the context is still on patient.name.
Yeah, but still also, the
same. But I mean, for a related person or something or other like that, you might.
I guess we've got more control. Like we can say related person and patient name, but not practitioner name, for example. Whereas if we put it on the type, then it basically everywhere where human name is used.
Yeah.
Well, it can be used anywhere anyway.
Not if we say patient.name.
Oh, right. Yeah. If we say patient.name, you can't use
name.
Yeah, so I think there's a question, like, for a start, is it like only patient-oriented kind of resources, profiles? And if we were to extend that value set with further things, so say it was the basis of a HPII validation, then it would be practitioner
And what
name
about
as well.
organization? Would it be used on organization as well?
Perhaps.
Well, you can't.
If it was,
it's not a human name.
That defined because it says individual. So the
yeah,
extension
okay, right.
needs
That's
to be
true, that's true.
considered
Yeah.
if we want to use it beyond, I guess, persons.
Right.
Yeah.
Understood. Yep.
Yeah. Heath, do you
All
want-
right. We have only 4 minutes left.
Yeah.
We need to wrap up.
My proposal is that we just go down patient.name. We can always apply it to others. It's probably easier. We don't have to create a profile from what I heard Brett suggesting on human name. I think let's just dip our toe in the water with patient.name. Happy for it to be unrelated person.name if we want, but I think we just go down on the element level.
Can I just get a sense of, would it ever go past people though, past person entities? Because once we tend to put something in, that's a little bit difficult. Like maybe we just change it to be name context individual. I don't know.
Well, the value set is also IHI at the moment, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, but I
IHI.
mean, we can set the context to be patient, but because the URL is individual, that kind of like normative stuff means that it's a lot harder to change later on to just put organization in the context. That's my only concern. Otherwise, very happy to start putting this in.
I think there is probably a theoretical use case for organization name in this context of being HI specific or trying to validate against the HI service.
All right. So generalize the name is what I hear.
Just make the URL instead of individual name, just like name context, and you keep the context as we described as starting with patient. That's quite fine because that just lets us expand if we think it's appropriate.
Yeah. So are you happy to? So do you want these contexts that are on screen, or do you want to take it back to?
Leave it for there.
I'm happy with that.
I think. Yeah. Is practitioner in there? Sorry, I'm looking at this on an iPhone.
No,
not yet.
It's not in there at the moment.
I would support putting that in there, but not including organizations just yet.
So, question as a chair, do we need to vote on this one? If we do, then I would need to have a motion.
I think there's more actions for me, and I'll take it on board. Because what I'd like the vote to be on is when we're ready to accept it.
Okay, then that's good. So therefore, we park this issue for future discussions pending further homework by Brett. Right.
That's good for now. I can turn that around.
Okay, wonderful. So with remaining 1 minute, I just want to touch on item number 4, other business. It came to my awareness that HL7 International is running a webinar on JIRA training for ballotters, which I think will be useful, but the time is actually not very convenient to Australian audiences, and also it sort of there are 2 different emails which cause a bit of confusion as to whether they are running both or they are replacing the second one with the first one with the second one. So I'm just bringing this to the attention of this group, and I will be watching this development closely. And if there are recording on the JIRA training from HL7 International webinar, I will bring it to the attention of this group and then put it in sort of one of our conference pages for people to peruse. So that's from me. All right, with that, we are right on the dot, 12:30 p.m. to adjourn the meeting. So any other questions or business that we need to discuss? All right, hearing none, thank you very much, everyone, for coming to this meeting, and thank you profusely to Dushi for taking notes. And I know that your notes are always very impressive. I always amazed as to how kind of people can do that. I am totally hopeless in sort of taking notes. Anyway, so if no further discussions and no other questions, then I will adjourn this meeting at 12:31.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, Stephen. Bye.
Thank
Stephen.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
We'll,
you.
Thanks, Stephen.
right,
Thank you.
we'll talk again next time. Bye.
Just